Ever stood somewhere where the air itself feels wrong? These are the places people whisper about, the ones locals avoid after dark. Every creaking floorboard, every shadow stretching too long makes your pulse spike. A chill brushes your neck, and the faint scent of dust and decay clings to the air. Every nerve screams to run. But curiosity pulls you forward, deeper into the unknown, where the shadows twist and seem almost alive. If you're enjoying this journey through the most impossible places, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Traveling Guide Hub for more real ghost stories and abandoned adventures. 1. Death Valley National Park, California, Nevada. I thought the worst thing about Death Valley would be the heat. I didn't expect it to feel alive. The moment my boots cracked against the sun-baked earth, a weight pressed into my chest. The wind carried a faint metallic tang, sharp in the dry air, and shadows flickered as though they didn't want to stay. My footsteps felt off, half a second too slow, echoing behind me when nothing should exist there. Long before tourists arrived, people came here chasing gold. Some found it. Many never made it back out. Abandoned mining camps and ghost towns litter the salt flats and canyons, silent witnesses to lives abruptly ended. Walking through them feels like trespassing through a memory not meant for the living. I tried to rationalize the sounds. The rustling, just the wind. The sudden chill brushing my neck, just the desert shifting. But nothing felt random. Each step seemed mirrored, and then I saw it. There weren't just my prints. Faint, extra prints trailing alongside mine, disappearing into the empty distance. I spun around. Nothing moved. The wind whispered over the salt, carrying a metallic tang that lingered on my tongue, and my heart pounded so hard I thought it might lift me off the ground. Every shadow stretched too long. Every distant clang felt intentional. I debated leaving, telling myself it was exhaustion, heat stroke, or imagination. But the valley didn't feel passive. It felt aware, waiting. Visitors over the decades have vanished without explanation. Hikers lost in narrow canyons, miners swallowed by the terrain. There's a pattern here, an invisible thread connecting those who walked and never returned. By dusk, the sun slipped behind jagged mountains, and the valley's silence became almost suffocating. And if Death Valley isn't empty, then something out there is still walking its trails, and this time, I wasn't sure they were my own. 2. Alcatraz Island, California. People say no one ever escaped Alcatraz, but they never talk about what refuses to leave. The second I stepped onto the concrete pier, a sharp wind off the bay cut through my jacket. Salt and rust hung thick in the air, tangling with the fog that rolled over the island, hiding the edges of the pier and the looming cell blocks. Every step on the cracked concrete echoed far too clearly, bouncing back from stone walls that had imprisoned thousands. My heartbeat quickened, the sound almost louder than the gulls circling overhead. By 1934, this island held the men no other prison could contain. Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, and murderers whose desperation made them dangerous. The prison wasn't just high security, it was designed to isolate, to trap, and to observe. Ghostly stories of former prisoners, unexplained noises, and sudden cold spots were whispered about for decades, and now, walking its corridors, it was easy to see why. Inside D Block, the air grew heavier, oppressive. The silence pressed in so loudly it felt like breathing could shatter it. Doors to cells that had been locked for decades creaked just slightly, as if nudged by something unseen. I tried to rationalize it, fog, wind, old metal settling, but the unease tightened around my chest. Then came the whisper, faint and urgent, carrying from one of the barred cells. No one else was in D Block. I froze. Another cell door shifted, inch by inch, slow and deliberate. The scraping of metal against stone sent chills down my spine. Every shadow stretched too long. Every distant clink felt intentional, echoing through the corridors like a warning. My mind raced, heart hammering, trying to convince myself it was all imagination. By dusk, the fog thickened and the bay turned to gray glass. And if Alcatraz isn't empty, then something is still walking its cells, watching from behind the bars, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it already knew I was there. 3. Skinwalker Ranch, Utah. People say Skinwalker Ranch is where the impossible happens, but no one tells you what it feels like to realize you're not alone, even in an empty field. The moment I stepped out of the car, the air stung my nose and made my eyes water. A sharp tang of ozone mixed with dry dust, thick and acrid, pressed against my senses. The low sun cast long shadows across the flat land, but they seemed wrong, stretched unnaturally, flickering as if alive. Every rustle of the dry grass sounded amplified, each movement in the field making my skin crawl. My heartbeat raced, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was moving just beyond my vision. In the 1990s, the Sherman family reported animals mutilated under mysterious circumstances, lights that defied explanation, and sounds no one could identify. Investigators from the National Institute for Discovery Science documented glowing orbs, poltergeist-like activity, and other phenomena that still baffle scientists today. The ranch has always been a place where reality seems thin, and walking its fields, it's easy to understand why. As I approached the far edge of the property, the temperature dropped suddenly, a chill that sank into my bones despite the sun still high. A low hum, like an engine with no source, thrummed across the land, making my stomach twist. The grass shifted in patterns too deliberate to be wind, and a sharp snap of a branch came from behind me. My instincts screamed to run, yet curiosity rooted me in place. Then it happened. A shadow glided across the sky, humanoid, impossibly smooth, moving against the sun's angle. My heart hammered as I stared, frozen. Every instinct told me something was wrong, that I had crossed a line no one should, and yet I couldn't tear my eyes away. By dusk, the field was wrapped in thick fog, and the horizon blurred into gray. And if Skinwalker Ranch isn't just a place, then something out there is watching, waiting, and I had the unsettling sense it already knew I was here. 4. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Centralia refuses to die, but its empty streets feel less like a town and more like a warning. The moment I stepped onto the cracked asphalt, a thin haze of smoke rose from fissures in the ground. The air smelled of sulfur and wet earth, bitter and sharp, stinging my nose and making my eyes water. Steam hissed and popped from cracks, curling into the cold morning air, while a low hum vibrated faintly under my feet, almost imperceptible but undeniable. Every step echoed strangely, as though the asphalt itself shifted beneath me. The town was silent, yet the ground felt alive. Once a thriving coal mining town, Centralia was abandoned after a mine fire ignited beneath it in the 1960s. Families left, but a few stubborn residents stayed, claiming smoke moved against the wind and flames pulsed like living things. Investigators and reporters over the years documented cracks in the earth emitting heat, strange lights, and a hum that could shake buildings. Walking here, it's clear why these stories persist. The land itself is unpredictable, hostile, and strangely sentient. As I passed the hollowed foundations of homes, the ground trembled beneath me. Steam erupted from a fissure just a few feet away, hot enough to singe my jacket. I could hear the popping hiss of escaping gas and the low, rhythmic groan from the depths below. I tried to rationalize it: unstable terrain, residual fire. But the patterns of smoke, the heat, the vibration all seemed deliberate, almost alive. Then it happened. A small flame flickered inside a crack, moving as if it had a pulse, rising and sinking in time with my own heartbeat. I froze, chest hammering, every instinct telling me to step back, yet curiosity anchored me in place. The hum grew slightly louder, almost like the ground was breathing. By dusk, fog rolled across the empty streets, the smoke curling into long, ghostly tendrils. And if Centralia isn't just a burned-out town, then the fire beneath has been watching all along, and I realized it had been aware of every step I took. 5. The Stanley Hotel, Colorado. The first thing you notice at the Stanley Hotel isn't the grandeur or mountain air, it's the silence. Walking through its polished halls, even during the day, the quiet presses in, almost solid, broken only by the faint creak of floorboards under my footsteps. The air carries the scent of aged wood and antiseptic, mingling with a subtle chill that crawls across my skin. Shadows along the walls stretch unnaturally, elongating and twisting in ways the sunlight shouldn't allow. Every step sets my heart hammering, and a strange weight settles on my chest, as if the building itself notices every move I make. Opened in 1909 by F.O. Stanley, the hotel was a luxury retreat with sweeping views of the Rockies. Over decades, guests and staff reported doors opening on their own, lights flickering, and cold drafts sweeping through sealed rooms. Stephen King stayed here in 1974, inspired by the eerie energy for The Shining. Staff still speak of disembodied footsteps echoing in empty hallways and whispers that drift from corners no one should occupy. I made my way to the long corridor known as D Corridor, where the tension is thickest. The temperature dropped sharply, visible breath in the air, as a faint thump echoed rhythmically just ahead. Shadows shifted, unnaturally long, moving with the dimming light. My instinct screamed to retreat, but curiosity anchored me. Room 418, the hotel's most famous haunted chamber, held the climax of unease. A pressure pressed against my chest as the brass doorknob rattled slightly. Soft whispers brushed my ears, syllables I couldn't make sense of. The door creaked, swinging just a little on its hinges. I froze, pulse racing, every instinct shouting danger, yet my feet stayed planted. By evening, the corridors darkened and the shadows deepened, and if the Stanley Hotel isn't just a building, then something inside still moves unseen, and I had the unsettling sense it was aware of every step I took, watching, waiting, patient. 6. Salton Sea, California. The first thing that hits you at Salton Sea isn't the water. It's the smell. A sour, acrid stench of decay drifts over the shoreline, thick and clinging, forcing a cough as soon as you step out of the car. The sun beats down, glaring off the rippled, stagnant surface, but instead of warmth, it feels oppressive, almost punishing. The silence is punctuated only by the distant crack of dead wood shifting in the wind or the faint squawk of birds circling over abandoned homes. The Salton Sea was created accidentally in 1905 when the Colorado River overflowed into the desert basin. It became a booming resort destination in the 1950s, attracting vacationers with its fishing, boating, and lakeside motels. But environmental disaster followed. Increasing salinity, pollution, and shrinking shorelines led to massive fish die-offs. Towns like Bombay Beach were abandoned almost overnight, leaving skeletal remains of motels, trailers, and storefronts scattered along the shore. Locals tell stories of strange lights over the water, sudden fogs rolling in, and unexplainable sounds, cries, footsteps, or mechanical hums in places that should be empty. As I walked along the cracked, salt-encrusted shoreline, a gust of wind carried a faint metallic tang. The ground beneath my feet crunched and shifted with each step, as if the desert itself were restless. Broken trailers leaned at impossible angles, their shadows stretching across the sand like skeletal arms. The heat rose off the surface of the water, but pockets of icy air would hit without warning, chilling my skin. I tried to rationalize it, the wind, the sun, but every sudden shift felt deliberate, as if the abandoned town were observing me. Then I noticed movement. A tattered kite, snagged on a fence post, twitched violently, though the air was still. A distant splash echoed across the lake, though the water was still and no one was around. My heart raced, instinct screaming to retreat, yet I couldn't look away. Every sound seemed amplified, the crunch of sand, the whisper of wind, the distant cry of a bird, all forming a pattern that shouldn't exist in emptiness. By dusk, the ruins glowed in a haunting orange from the setting sun. And if Salton Sea isn't just a dying lake, then the desolation itself is alive, and I had the unsettling sense that it was aware of every step I took along its shores. 7. Area 51, Nevada. They say nothing escapes Area 51, but as I approached the perimeter, it wasn't the fences or warning signs that unsettled me, it was the silence. The desert stretched for miles, shimmering under the sun, yet every step felt amplified, my boots crunching too loudly against the gravel. The wind carried no birdsong, no rustle of wildlife, just the faint hum of electricity from distant surveillance equipment, almost imperceptible but constant. Area 51 became a classified U.S. Air Force facility in the 1950s, originally used for testing high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft like the U-2. Over the decades, its secrecy gave birth to countless conspiracy theories: alien spacecraft, experimental technologies, and unexplained aerial phenomena. Pilots, workers, and even casual skywatchers have reported strange lights darting across the desert, objects defying conventional flight, and occasional low, rumbling hums that seem to emanate from nowhere. Trespassing is illegal and strictly enforced, but stories of people seeing something impossible persist. As I neared the outer perimeter, the desert heat pressed against my skin, yet sudden icy gusts hit my face with no warning. Shadows shifted unnaturally around a cluster of weathered surveillance towers, stretching long across the gravel. A faint whirring sound pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I paused, convinced I had imagined it, yet the sensation of being observed was undeniable. Every instinct screamed that this was not just a place, it was aware, calculating, and patient. Then it happened. A flicker of motion against the horizon. A light, too precise, too fast to be a plane, zigzagged across the sky, vanishing in a blink. My heart pounded, my skin crawled. I tried to rationalize it: experimental aircraft, drones, but the speed and pattern defied explanation. A soft hum resonated beneath my feet, like electricity running through the desert itself, and the shadows around me elongated unnaturally, as though reaching. By dusk, the facility's silhouette loomed against a blood-red sunset. And if Area 51 isn't just a secret military base, then something out there watches everything that moves, and I had the unsettling sense that it already knew I was there, just beyond the fences, waiting. 8. Bodie Ghost Town, California. The first thing that strikes you at Bodie isn't the wind or the sun, it's the emptiness. The streets are wide and silent, buildings standing half-rotted yet stubbornly upright, their windows dark and hollow like eyes staring into nothing. The air smells of dust, aged timber, and something faintly metallic, as if the ghost of the town's past lingers in every creak and groan of its decaying structures. Bodie was founded in 1859 as a gold mining town. By 1880, its population peaked at nearly 10,000, with saloons, churches, and schools bustling with life. But the gold ran out, fires destroyed parts of the town, and harsh winters drove most residents away. By the mid-20th century, Bodie had become a state-protected ghost town, preserved in arrested decay. Visitors and historians alike report strange occurrences, unexplained footsteps echoing in empty saloons, doors swinging on their own, and the occasional fleeting shadow glimpsed through broken windows. I walked down Main Street, crunching over gravel and old boards. The wind picked up suddenly, rattling signs and shutters, though the sun was high and the day still. Shadows from the crooked buildings stretched across the streets, shifting as though alive. I passed an old church with its doors ajar. Inside, the air was colder than outside, and faint creaking echoed in rhythm with my heartbeat. My instincts told me to move faster, but curiosity rooted me in place, forcing me to peer through dusty windows. Then I saw it. A door at the far end of the street swung open slightly, though no wind reached it. The metallic tang of old iron and dust filled my nostrils. Each step I took seemed to echo unnaturally, the sound lagging just a fraction behind me, as if the town itself were mimicking my movements. By late afternoon, Bodhi's golden light deepened the decay, painting the town in long, dark shadows. And if Bodhi isn't just a preserved relic, then the echoes of its past still linger, watching, waiting, and I had the unsettling sense that every step I took was quietly noted by something unseen among the abandoned buildings. 9. Bell Witch Cave, Tennessee. The first thing that hits you at Bell Witch Cave isn't the darkness, it's the weight. A damp, earthy heaviness presses down the moment you step inside, carrying the smell of wet stone and mold. The air is thick and cold, even in the middle of a warm Tennessee afternoon. Every footstep echoes against the jagged walls, yet the echoes feel wrong, delayed by fractions of a second, as if something unseen is matching your movements. The Bell Witch legend dates back to the early 1800s. The Bell family of Adams, Tennessee, reported a series of unexplained disturbances, knocking on walls, slapping and scratching sounds, eerie whispers, and even physical attacks on family members. Some accounts describe sightings of a dark, shadowy figure that could move freely through walls. Legend says that the entity, known as the Bell Witch, haunted the property for years, instilling fear in locals and sparking fascination that continues today. The cave behind the Bell Farm is where many believe the witch made her lair, an enclosed space that amplifies sound and bends perception. I stepped carefully into the cave, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating jagged stone walls that seemed to close in. The air felt cooler here, damp and clinging to my skin. A sudden gust of wind, or perhaps an unseen presence, brushed across my neck, making every hair stand on end. Faint knocks echoed through the cave, though I was alone. I told myself it was the wind, the shifting earth, my imagination, but instinct screamed that something else was here, watching, waiting. Then came the whisper, faint, almost indistinguishable, seeming to come from the shadows themselves. It wasn't a word I recognized, yet it carried urgency, like a warning. My chest tightened, heart hammering against ribs, and every nerve told me to turn and run. But curiosity, morbid and stubborn, rooted me in place. By the time I emerged from the cave, the daylight felt surreal, too bright for the lingering tension in my chest. And if Bell Witch Cave isn't just a hollow in the earth, then the legend's presence is still alive, and I had the unsettling sense that it followed me out, listening, waiting for the next person to step too close. 10. Myakka River State Park, Florida. The first thing that hits you at Myakka River State Park isn't the greenery, it's the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, almost unnatural silence that presses against your ears. The humid air smells of wet earth, decaying leaves, and stagnant water, clinging to your skin and making every breath feel thick. Even the distant caw of a bird or the splash of a fish seems magnified, out of rhythm with the world, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. Established in 1934, Myakka River State Park is one of Florida's oldest and largest state parks, spanning over 37,000 acres of wetlands, prairies, and forests. Its rivers and swamps are home to alligators, snakes, and countless other wildlife. Though visitors flock here for hiking and kayaking, the park has long inspired stories of disorientation, sudden strange noises, and fleeting glimpses of something moving in the trees that doesn't belong. Rangers and hikers alike have reported inexplicable chills, whispers carried by the wind, and a feeling of being followed even on empty trails. I followed a narrow trail through the cypress swamp, my boots squelching in the wet earth. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled shadows that danced across the ground. Every few steps, a twig snapped behind me, or perhaps somewhere just out of sight. I tried to convince myself it was an animal, the wind, anything, but my instincts kept screaming that I was being observed. The air grew cooler in patches, sending shivers down my spine. A distant splash echoed across the river, though no one else was near. Then, as I crossed a wooden boardwalk above the marsh, I caught movement in the corner of my vision, a shadow shifting just beyond the tree line, disappearing when I turned to look. My heart hammered, every muscle tensing. I felt the park's silence press against me, thick and almost sentient, punctuated by faint, impossible noises, a whisper, a splash, the rustle of unseen wings. By dusk, the water reflected a deep red sky, stretching endlessly across the marshes. And if Myakka River State Park isn't just a place of wildlife and wetlands, then something in its shadows is alive in ways you can't see or hear until it wants you to. And I had the unsettling sense that it was aware of every step I took along its trails, waiting for the next person to wander too close. These places aren't just locations on a map. They're reminders that the world still holds mysteries we can't explain. From the burning depths of Centralia to the shadowed halls of Alcatraz, each site carries stories of danger, fear, and the unknown. Which of these places would you dare to explore? Comment below with the one that sent chills down your spine. And remember, sometimes the most ordinary path can hide the most impossible secrets.